Tonight on Life on the Rock, we have Father Richard Hermes and Jimmy Mitchell, Part 1. We'll take you to the garden with Father Joseph and much more. Welcome to Life on the Rock. Tonight our guest is Father Richard Hermes and Jimmy Mitchell. They are from Jesuit High School in Tampa Bay, Florida, and they're going to tell us about their amazing work in forming young men to be vibrant Catholics.
And both of them bring a lot of experience to the work they do. Father's been there for 14 years, and Jimmy, he's been working there his first year full-time for a year, but he's been involved for about 7 years. So we're now going to a video with Father Joseph.
We human beings are unique in that we're not pure spirits like the angels in heaven, nor are we simply beasts and animals that do not have an immortal soul. But we are this profound unity of the corporal and the spiritual. We have a body and we have a soul. We don't have two natures, we have one nature, the human nature. It's this profound unity of the corporal and the spiritual. And so we need to recognize that reality in ourselves. We don't despise our bodies, as is sometimes talked about today, but we see our bodies as going to share in the glory of heaven. They're destined for glory, our entire human nature. And that they are to be temples of the Holy Spirit as well. So we need to both nourish our bodies and our souls, we need to strengthen them, and we need to have the sunshine. So for our souls, we know that reality, right? That we need spiritual nourishment if our souls are going to thrive. So we need prayer. We need good spiritual reading, programs on EWTN, and the Eucharist, which is the nourishment par excellence. And then we can think of also that our souls also need to be strengthened, and so temptation is an opportunity to strengthen virtue and to practice discipline, and that enables us to flourish. And then to also look upon the Son, S-O-N, Jesus, who is the way, the truth, and the life. But also then our bodies too, that we are to honor them and to assist them to flourish too with good nourishment. That's why I like to garden, and we're seeing the garden where I often work here when I have the opportunity. Because a garden enables you to have good nourishment. The vegetables, when they're most pristine with all the enzymes and phytonutrients and all of the things that are there when they're freshly picked. Also, gardening enables you to exercise, shoveling and getting out in the fresh air. And we're most happy, we're most mentally acute when we're physically active. And then we're also enjoying the sunshine because vitamin D, right, comes from the sun. So I'd like you to think today about that profound unity that we are as human beings of the corporal, the spiritual, body and soul, to nourish and strengthen both of those elements and to look upon the Son, Jesus Christ.
Father Richard Hermes and Jimmy Mitchell, welcome to Life on the Rock, and good having you here. I know you've traveled a long way coming out from Tampa, Florida. You're here to talk a little bit about Jesuit High School, thriving school, and really involved with Catholic youth and developing really strong Christian men, just kind of getting them prepared to go out into the world and to really live a life of Christ. And so I'm going to, Father, ask you just a little bit of just the history of Jesuit High School.
Yeah, so thank you for having us, brother. So Jesuit was founded by the Jesuit Fathers in Tampa in 1899. And so it's an old school. It's got a lot of deep roots in the city. Mm-hmm. It's an all-boys school, grades 9 to 12. And we started this year with 850 students. So it's our largest enrollment ever, and it's the enrollment that we've been growing to. We've been growing for the last 10 to 15 years. And it's kind of this has been our target, is to get to the mid-800s so that we can Yeah, it's a good number for us.
Yeah.
You can have all the programs and clubs and sports teams, and yet also still have a real personal formation, which is the main goal of the school.
And Father, you serve as the president
Yes.
at Jesuit High School, and Jimmy, you serve as the director of the campus ministry.
That's right.
And, now, Father, you've been there about 14 years.
Yeah, this is
now.
my 14th year as the school as president.
And Jimmy, you've been there full-time now a year, but kind of involved heavily in the past few years.
Yeah, really since 2014, been helping out with retreats and pilgrimages, and I've known and loved this school for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually about an hour from where my dad lives, so I was frequenting campus. Whenever I could get an invitation, I was happy to just jump on it.
Yeah.
And also you're close to the beach and amusement parks and other things, so it always felt like a vacation. I never dreamt I'd have the privilege of working there full-time though.
One of the things going on with Jesuit High School is that there's a lot of conversions right now.
Yes.
And it's kind of making the news.
Yeah,
Can you tell us a little bit about that, Father?
Yeah, so about 10 years ago, a couple of students, sophomores, I think, maybe 10 or 11 years ago, approached me, and they both came and met in my office. They wanted to become Catholic.
Yeah.
So I started talking to them about RCIA and trying to find a parish. And well, ultimately, I contacted the bishop, and one thing led to another, and he gave us permission through the local pastor. He subdelegated me to actually baptize them and receive them into the church, confirm them at an all-school mass. And so we began to do that. We kind of developed a modified RCIA program with the permission of the bishop and the diocese and working with the local pastors. And we 4, 5, 6, sometimes a couple of years there were 9 who came into the church and became Catholic, and that's been going on for many years now. And then all of a sudden we came out of COVID, and Jimmy started as director of campus ministry last year. And a few weeks in, he started. I don't know. You came to me and you said, "Father, I think we already have 10 or 15 interested." Then the next thing was like 20 or 25. I don't know. You were getting guys coming up to you regularly, right?
That's right. That's right. It's almost maybe not a running joke, but it's certainly a massive privilege every time a student walks in the door. Whether they're the starting quarterback of what I think is going to be a state championship football team.
Should be deep anyway. Don't jinx us.
Or a baseball player, all the way down to guys that are just really academic or really into theater. It just seems to cut across every personality type. At a certain point, if you're not Catholic and you go to Jesuit High School in Tampa, you've got to at least decide. You almost have to embrace or reject the faith at a certain point. And I think the boys so often embrace it because they see the beauty of it, they see the integrity and the joy that it brings so many of their friends and their faculty and staff as well.
So last year, at the end of the year, in 2 school masses, one day after another, the Feast of Our Lady of Fatima and the Feast of St. Matthias, we baptized or received 22 into the faith, 11 at each mass in front of 50% of the student body each day. So it was beautiful.
So with COVID, you have to kind of split everything up?
We were doing the chapel at most of the year at 50% capacity.
Okay.
But with that many candidates for baptism and confirmation, we'd have had to do that anyway because we didn't have enough room in the sanctuary for that many at one time.
Now, the both of you, you're working with young men, and I think there's just a lot of distractions out there, a lot of confusion. So what is kind of the attitude that you see with these men that come to Jesuit High School and their kind of approach to religion and just kind of faith in God in general?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that you get a lot of young men, even those who have been baptized Catholic, increasingly there are guys who are just totally unchurched. They don't even have a vocabulary for God or religion. They don't know anything. It's shocking how little some of them know. And it's not their fault. It's just the culture they're raised in. And they maybe come from very great families and they've got a lot of educational ambition, but they just have, you can't assume that there's any cultural foundation for the faith in terms of active formation, right? So they have a lot of virtues and a lot of good things you can build on, but I mean, that'd be,
Absolutely.
you probably see a lot of that in campus ministry.
That's what impresses me is the natural virtue coupled with the openness to the faith.
Yeah.
And then suddenly, they're getting really solid Orthodox Catholic theology every day, 5 days a week for 4 years. And then suddenly they're stepping into these beautiful liturgies with a full choir and orchestra and altar servers and incense. And, to a young man, that kind of beauty is really actually quite appealing.
Attractive.
And then you couple that with retreats that are required to make every year, but frankly, never a chore. The students really look forward to the retreats, often have life-changing experiences on those retreats. It just seems like there's this compounding effect where the openness and that natural virtue that many of them come in with leads to a real acceptance of the Catholic Church and all our teachings.
you don't get so many kids coming in anymore with strong biases. You get some, but not many. They don't come in with all the arguments against faith or God. You know, so we have to remind ourselves of that a lot of times there's just a total naivete, a total openness and innocence about it all. And they're interested, they're curious. And of course the Catholic faith has such deep riches and such great beauty, and the tradition is endless, you know, and we have so many different opportunities at the school to present that to them and to, you know, for them to encounter Christ through the saints, through beautiful liturgy, through a wonderful moment of prayer on a retreat, through a service project where they're serving the needy and the poor, through a pilgrimage or a leadership retreat. You know, Jimmy just came back this summer from a leadership retreat and kind of a Catholic leadership retreat in Wyoming in the mountains with Wyoming Catholic College leading us, several of our students. Well, they're out in this, you know, beautiful, the beauty, and then they're stripped down to the elements of just, you know, basic survival every day, you know, little food, fatigue, daily math. We had a Jesuit with them, young Jesuit. I couldn't have done it myself. A young Jesuit who could actually climb the mountains, saying daily mass for them in these beautiful settings. Well, this touches a young man. And those boys who all went, they weren't all gung-ho practicing Catholics, but I tell you what, a lot of them came back with their faith greatly deepened and a desire to know God, a desire to practice their faith.
And there's many ways we can really encounter God through the faith. You know, it can be through people, through the liturgy, through just studies. I mean, it's open. I mean, there's endless possibilities. Now, I was just thinking whenever you're talking about being out in Wyoming, a lot of times we do need that survival guide just in religion and spirituality, because there's just a lot of voices out there that are just constantly, you know, peppering us with all kinds of just, I think, distortions out there in the world, but to be really rooted in just an orthodox faith and truth and beauty and goodness. So.
And as you said, I mean, to push back against the confusion and the complacency and the relativism and the noise, you know, 2 or 3 days in silence or 2 or 3 days even without their phones tends to be transformative. And then you bring in the sacraments, and then you bring in these great upperclassmen who are on fire in their faith, and suddenly there's not a student who has a bad retreat experience, even if ultimately they're not deciding or entering into a deep discipleship with the Lord. You can see that the dial's being turned and there's a seed being planted regardless. It's very exciting.
We got to go to a break, but I wanted to ask you, whenever we come back, a little bit about the retreats there at Jesuit High.
Great.
Awesome.
Jimmy, as the director of the campus ministry, I want to ask you a little bit about the retreats. That's a big part of Jesuit High. Getting men to really kind of form a prayer life and really to connect to God through prayer. But what are the retreats like? What are y'all doing there?
For sure. So our freshmen have one big retreat on campus every year. It's a little bit of a circus. It's 9 hours. It's 230 14-year-olds, you know? Wow. But it's led by our upperclassmen. Some of our most solid and best formed upperclassmen lead them in small groups, give testimonies. Of course, the sacraments are readily available, so they have adoration, confession, Mass. And then there's this beautiful, beautiful Eucharistic procession through campus at the very end of that retreat.
And darkness and in the night.
Candlelit, the whole thing. So the freshmen, they get a really nice sort of dipping their feet into the, we'll just say the shallow end of a Jesuit high school retreat. By the time they're a sophomore, they're off campus. It's more of a 12, 13-hour retreat, very extensive. We had guys coming back from that retreat, well, as recently as last spring, who made the best confession, or maybe the first confession they've made in a long, long time. Next thing you know, they're coming to Mass the next day. It's just one young man I always think of who was in tears at the end of Mass. Kept going to the next period class. The teachers were sending him to counseling. They kept wondering, what's wrong with this kid? He can't stop crying. He's an athlete, by the way, the last kid you'd expect. And eventually they realized he needs to be sent to campus ministry. And we sit down and we process what had happened on the retreat. And he said, Mr. Mitchell, I guess I'm just overwhelmed with God's love, and I've never felt that before.
That was from a single-day sophomore retreat.
Really?
So simple and yet so profound. For the juniors, it's 3 days, 2 nights. Sort of the sophomore retreat at a whole nother level. It's called the Kairos Retreat. And again, very student-driven, very student-led. I mean, we have some of our what we call peer ministers who will pray and sometimes even on their own accord fast just in preparation for these retreats.
They give all the main talks, they lead the small groups, but there's a teacher involved with each small group, but the senior leader really is the one directing those groups and they give the main talks.
That's right.
But Mass each day, and then there's always a big adoration hour we bring 3 or 4 Jesuits out to hear confession. So the Kairos is a big moment, and then the senior, they have options, right? Senior year.
Pretty amazing. The senior retreat is either a father-son retreat, which brings a lot of healing and a lot of just depth and growth in those relationships with their dads. But then also the silent retreat. And we just did one 2 weeks ago, and I was amazed. From the most devout to the least on that retreat, all of them were just blown over by the silence and how God speaks through it, you know.
I think too with the silence that can be somewhat intimidating if you've never really encountered that or experienced it. But what's been kind of the overall result with the silent retreat?
Well, how many of them were approaching you for spiritual direction afterwards? I mean, a handful.
Right.
They want to start going to daily Mass. They want to start praying a daily Rosary. They want to start discerning God's will. I had never been exposed to a silent retreat or the spiritual exercises until I was 2 years into college, which means I never asked for God's wisdom or guidance in my life when it came to big decisions. And here we have a bunch of seniors in the midst of college applications and vocational discernment who really are surrendering all of that to the Lord. And you see the vocational implications, the implications it'll have on their faith for the rest of their lives, all from 3 days of silence.
That's the closest we get them to the 30-day spiritual exercises. But they had 2 young Jesuit scholastics who were on our faculty out there with them.
Right.
You were there, another campus minister, Father Joseph Carolla, who teaches theology, teaches patristics at the Gregorian University. He's spending some time in our community right now till the semester starts in Rome. He was out there. He preached the masses. It's a heavy investment by the school because you've got full-time teachers and campus ministers who are, each directing 4 or 5 students on the silent retreat over the 3 days. So, 25 students, but we probably had 6 or 7 adults out there. So but we've invested heavily into campus ministry the past few years. We have 3 men working in campus ministry. Jimmy's the director. We have a Jesuit scholastic and another layman who are the assistants, and we now have a full-time administrative assistant so that they're not bogged down all the time in paperwork and emails and logistics, but they can devote time, especially day to day. That's been a big development since COVID. It's not just about the retreats or the pilgrimages, the service projects, but Jimmy, with the senior leadership of the student peer ministers, they've developed these discipleship groups that meet every day at lunch. So there's a group, might be 8 or 9 or 10 boys who meet, I guess they meet once a week.
That's right.
In their discipleship group. But last year there were about 70, 80 students involved in discipleship groups, and now even more, right?
For sure. Just over 100 students, I think, right now are at least, every other week plugging into one of these discipleship groups. They get busy. Some days they got, 3 tests. They just got to focus on that at lunchtime. But what's amazing is this is where, certainly last year, I saw a lot of young men overcoming struggles, purity and chastity, consistent prayer life, again, discerning God's will. It was in this fraternity, that spiritual fraternity, they would be able to process that kind of stuff out loud and hold each other accountable. We had several young men who learned how to pray the Hail Mary for the first time in one of these discipleship groups, and then went on to join the after-school Rosary group that then led him to decide to become Catholic. Very basic stuff. And I think it just points to, again, that openness and that hunger.
And the after-school Rosary group is something that we started last year, and they, even if Jimmy or the campus ministers can't be there, usually some other adult will go, but the students will organize it themselves. They just meet in front of the chapel, and they have their route out around the football field while the football players are getting ready for practice. They're out there playing the Rosary in the blazing sun, and they end up at our grotto on campus, and they like to kneel down on the rocks of the grotto and pray the final prayers there. It's just really pretty. And anytime we have guests that, on campus, we'll invite them to come join the Rosary group.
Well, I wish we had more time, but where can we learn more about Jesuit High?
We have a website, jesuittampa.org, www.jesuittampa.org.
Good.
We're also on social media, Twitter and Facebook, and we keep it well updated with all these and other activities.
Well, Father Hermes and Jimmy, thank you for being on Life on the Rock, and the work you all are doing is just really good out there. It's well needed to really form men and just the life of Christ and to really preach the gospel into an unbelieving world, and that's what you're forming these men then.
Thank you,
you,
brother.
brother.
Thank you.
Wow, I was so encouraged by that show. See young men responding to the faith. You know, what got our attention here at EWTN was they had 20 to 25 young men become Catholic through the RCIA program. You know, that they're doing something right.
Yeah.
And you could feel the energy, the zeal, kind of the masculine focus on doing and achieving, promoting a virtue. I think that really speaks to these young men.
I think one of the things I also picked up on was just the student initiation, but how it's a lot of the students leading this, the prayers, the groups, the activities, the clubs, because they have a hunger there to learn more about the faith, the truth, the beauty, and the goodness. And they're at Jesuit High, you know, they're providing that, and they're staffed with good teachers, good leadership, you know, and mentors for a lot of questions young men have on their minds.
Yeah, Father kept repeating that about how having good staff members, people that were zealous, loved the faith, you know, promoting the faith in that way. I think it's a message to all of us to give ourselves to something, you know, to invest ourselves and, you know, to get that kind of success in a good sense.
And God uses our talents, you know, and our skills, and whenever we put that, you know, towards the good, you know, God's going to enrich that. He's going to bless our lives and the lives of others. You know, and there is that initiation that, you know, Father, he came into the school, you know, and it's a good school, but he says we can be better, you know, and that's been his aim, you know, in forming a lot of these young men, and really just gospel principles, knowing who Christ is, you know, and knowing that, you know, you're loved by God and, you know, that there is a purpose in life, because a lot of times, you know, young men aren't hearing that. And, you know, we were talking that, you know, a lot of sin today is just kind of something very normal, you know, and that has an effect on our faith, so.
Right. So reflect on their witness of having this zealous energy for the faith and helping these young men be formed as devout and upstanding young Catholic men. So we send you into that vineyard with a blessing. May our Heavenly Father shine his face upon you. May he give you his peace. May Almighty God bless you, the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit. We'll see you next week on Life on the Rock.
There are days that I still long for purpose, to see the plans that you have willed for me. And sometimes I am walking through the valley, I'm certain you are always right beside me. 'Cause even when I can't see, and you've gone before me, and I will walk by faith, I will walk by faith. The future is a mystery, forever will you lead me, and I will walk by faith, I will walk by faith. Lord, I'm looking for a perfect answer to all the questions my heart begs of you. And if you give me more than I can handle, I will pray for strength to make it through. 'Cause even when I can't see, and you've gone before me,